Hello, hello, bonjour. This is Marino with Elegant Femme, and I want to talk to you about a very sensitive subject today. And it's not maybe the happiest thing to talk about, however, it's something that I believe universally we have in common as humans. And given that I've gone through this experience, I couldn't just skip over it. My intention, in fact, my life's purpose is to assist women to live their lives fully. And so skipping parts of life wouldn't really be congruent with what it is I stand for. So I want to give you a little bit of context and what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Although we like the idea of how to get over loss, the truth is, in my experience, we don't get over loss. And we actually integrate it into our lives. It's not something that we just get over, we just forget, or just goes away. We learn how to integrate it into our lives, into our being. And my intention is to share with you not only how can you integrate that grief or loss in your life, but how can you come to a space where you utilize that grief and loss as an opportunity for further evolution, for learning, for awareness, and even for momentum inside of your life, your life's purpose, and your soul's calling. So to give you a little bit context, I am not new to grief. I lost my firstborn son when he was 6 days old, and he died in my arms. I was 26 years old at the time, and we went on to continue to try to have children after that. I had a miscarriage after that. Did end up with 2 healthy, gorgeous boys, for which I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful. And then we ended up doing an IVF cycle for many reasons, which I'm not going to get into. We had a successful IVF cycle, we got pregnant, and we saw the heartbeat, everything was looking phenomenal. We did all the chromosome tests and that kind of thing, because at this stage I am over 40, so different life stage than I was when I was 26, and just recently we lost that baby at a little over 8 weeks for no known reason. I have a sense inside that it was very spiritual in context, but regardless, my point here is that I truly do understand what grief feels like and what loss feels like. And coming from a spiritual perspective at this stage of my life, I get, and you might too, that we have a higher calling, that we believe in God's will and the highest good, and if you have that understanding already in your life when you do go through grief or loss, it's phenomenal. That's great. However, it doesn't take the pain away. And that was one of my really big learnings most recently with the loss of this baby, is that because I had a spiritual understanding and knowing, I didn't want it to hurt as bad. I thought that spiritual knowing that everything was going to eventually be okay would kind of skip me. I'd jump ahead on the grief line, and that's not what happens. In fact, grief and loss gives you the opportunity to own your human experience in a way that I don't know any other experience that does that the way grief and loss does, and we can't skip it. So the first thing that I do want to talk about is that in order to really integrate the grief, you have to go into it. I know you don't want to. I didn't want to. It's certainly not easy to feel that pain, that wrenching, that the deep questioning. Many of the ways that I explain what grief feels like is it cracks you open. You really have that moment of presence, that life is just really so short, and you're really shaken to your core inside of grief. There's a different clarity. You really do see beyond the matrix of this reality into, whoa, this happens. This is going to happen to all of us. And so that's really important for us to take the opportunity to feel that inside of that space and go into the grief, go into the pain, go into the hurt. And how do we do that? Let's get a little bit more specific about that. I will share my experience inside of this. I want to be really clear as I share this. I am not saying there's only one way to deal with grief, or that my way is the right way. And specifically, I don't believe in this clean-cut kind of grief process. There's been a lot of studies and books written on the 5 stages of grief. I don't buy it, honestly. I believe we do go through stages and processes, but I don't think it's all clean-cut and on this certain time, then you're all of a sudden at this next stage. Grief is very messy. It's very messy, it's very up and down, it's very in and out, so please trust your own process. It's really important. So I'm only going to be sharing my experience. In order for me to integrate the grief, I went into a space of journaling consistently. In fact, at that point, I wrote a lot of poetry, just whatever was coming out of me, a lot of agony, a lot of the dark spaces, allowing myself to feel what was real. So a lot of journaling assisted me in integrating the grief. One specific journaling exercise that I'll share with you, which may or may not speak to you, I actually wrote out the entire story. I think that that's important. So however you lost a loved one, whatever the grief is about, I know it can sound a little bit tragic, but here's the truth. Whatever you went through was tragic. You know, the loss of a loved one is tragic. I'm not saying that the tragedy lasts forever, but at that point, that temporary loss is really intense. One of the biggest things that I know I wanted to have happen after I lost my children was I wanted them to be remembered. I didn't want them to be forgotten. And when I've spoken to clients who have lost people, it's the same thing. Whether they've lost their mother, their brother, or their sister, they don't want that person to be forgotten. So there's something about writing down the actual story, the actual experience that gives some grounding to it. And I think the more we tell our stories, the more we cement that reality that we've really gone through something intense. So journaling, writing out the experience, actually, giving reality to it can be really, really grounding. Giving yourself permission to react however you need to react. If you need to stay in bed, if you need to, this is certainly a time where you get away from I should. I should be drinking green juice and cleansing this. I should be, if you want to eat Jelly Bellies and stay in bed and sleep, allow yourself to do that. Obviously, there's a point, right, where you recognize inside yourself if you're going into a dark depression and you need some assistance. I'm talking about that just necessity of healing, to give yourself some permission to heal. The other thing is, if and when you get to a space that you want to talk to somebody, finding people who have been through a similar experience can be very, very helpful. Because if you haven't been through a similar experience, all of our loved ones, our families and friends who really care about us, who haven't been through the exact same experience, want to support us and try to support us, but sometimes can say the wrong thing or something that really just triggers us inside. However, if you can get yourself in a space where other people have been through something similar and just let yourself heal and speak about it, that can be very profound. The other thing, and again, I might bring up some controversy for some of you as I share this, but I really believe for myself, when you're experiencing something this intense in your life, it's an opportunity to I want to be careful as I say this because I could just hear, she told me to do this. I'm not telling anybody to do this. Again, this is my experience. This is a time to reevaluate everything in your life. So maybe it's time to shake things up. Maybe it's time to do something crazy. And that's what I mean. I'm going to utilize that word crazy because that's how I felt inside. I needed to react to this experience. Of course, I want you to be careful. I want you to be safe, all of those kind of things. But this is a gorgeous, really divine time to look at your life and say, wait a minute. What's working in my life and what isn't? If I had the courage, which you do in the moment, when grief happens to you, isn't it like there's something that comes over you that's like F the world? You have a different understanding of life and how crucial and critical every breath is. So take this opportunity to reevaluate your life, what's working, what's not, and make a change that's going to serve you and your life going forward because you're still here, which I know can be really difficult when we lose a loved one, but you're still here. So I intend for this to be of some service to you. I'd love to hear from you. I know you've been through grief, you've been through loss as part of the human experience you have. I'd love to hear from you. What have you done that has assisted you in healing from grief or loss or integrating that grief and loss in a way that's been profound to you, to your life's purpose, and to your soul's calling? I'd love to hear from you. And really, with all my heart, I truly understand, and I'm sending you lots of blessings of love and light. You can do this.